Ilhan Omar has officially run out of time. Today is the deadline for a committee that's investigating alleged fraud in the state of Minnesota. Ilhan Omar's been asked to turn over all of her electronic communication and paper files to this committee with a deadline of 5 o'clock Central today. What happens if she doesn't respond to this demand? What happens if they find alleged fraud? I'm going to get into all of the details that you need to know. And make sure you watch till the end, because there's somebody else that's at the highest levels within the state that is also under investigation.
Minnesota lawmakers are asking Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to respond by Tuesday regarding questions about a statewide child nutrition fraud scheme. The lawmakers are seeking Omar's written and electronic communications involving the state's Feeding Our Future program, which misused millions of dollars in taxpayer funds. State lawmakers specifically hoping to look at Omar's correspondence with the owners of the Safari restaurant. State lawmakers point out Omar was a regular at that restaurant, staging many campaign events there. Its owners recently pleaded guilty for their role in the $250 million fraud scheme. Now, Omar's team and allies have largely framed allegations trying to link her to fraud as politically motivated and not substantiated. But for more on this, we are joined by Minnesota State Representative Kristin Robins tonight. She is the chair of the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Committee, also a candidate for Minnesota governor. Appreciate you being here today and sharing your perspective. And I know we're fast approaching this Tuesday request for Congresswoman Omar here. If she doesn't respond by this deadline, what is your committee's move on Wednesday morning?
You know, we hope she will respond. She certainly owes it to Minnesota taxpayers and families to respond to our questions. And so I'm still hoping, but if not, the committee will examine all our options and we will continue to press for it, because she created the program, the Meals Act, that took the guardrails off the school nutrition program, that created the conditions for all this fraud.
So a couple really important points came out in that news hit. First off, this is being led at the state level, but there's also federal level investigations going into each one of these programs. There's a program that Ilhan Omar created that allowed it an environment for all of these fraudsters to follow through in. Secondly, the owner of this restaurant, the Safari restaurant, he's the one that started this alleged program called Feeding Our Future. Actually, it's not alleged anymore, because over 52 defendants have now pled guilty to over $250 million in fraud that's specifically tied to Feeding Our Future. One of those individuals was directly tied to Ilhan Omar. He was known as her enforcer. Guhad Hashi Saeed was the 52nd person that was part of this Feeding Our Future program that pled guilty. So where else has this Guhad shown up? Well, this gentleman, if you look, we circled him here. He is in the back of the victory party that Ilhan Omar held when she first became an elected official. Where was this party being held? It was being held, you guessed it, at the Safari restaurant. So the same place where all of the fraud took place is where she held her victory party when she became a state representative. Now, incidentally, there's another individual that was part of this program, Abdul Abu Bakar Ali. Well, he is only, and this is after he's been found guilty, he's only going to be serving 1 year and 1 day in prison for and participated in over $250 million in fraud. The offset and the downside risk to participating in fraud is nothing, evidently, in the state of Minnesota, and that's what concerns me about this state-led effort. Now, the second part of this is that this isn't Omar's only rodeo. She's been complicit in overrepresenting her personal finances and net worth in her congressional disclosure. We went over that a number of times, and she's also got a federal level inquiry into just that. She's also secured millions of dollars for her sister. And in this case, Sarah Noir, she's the chief executive of the People Center Clinics and Services. Well, Ilhan Omar got her $2 million in funding secured through the Minneapolis Health Clinic. So again, Omar has just been paying off and partnering with all kinds of payoff schemes, and the clock is now running out. But it's not only her that it's running out on. The best chance of prosecution and holding Omar to task for her alleged activities is actually, as I mentioned earlier, at the federal level with the congressional inquiries. In this instance, though, and this is where this is starting to unwind at an uncontrollable level for Omar and others, this is where Jim Jordan was questioning Tim Walz as to why the state was pausing, and then restarting funding into the Feeding Our Future program once they knew that there was alleged fraud going on there. Now listen to Tim Walz's answers.
The payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And
I didn't ask that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously, it wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
My understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it?
Now, I'm going to jump in here. This stuttering pattern of pausing and restarting, I'm telling you there's more to this. There has to be. And there has to be some type of communication, not just what Tim Walz is trying to dismiss here, that it was just a misinterpretation and that they thought that they had to continue payment. If there's any alleged written communications between the Walz people, AG Ellison, who's also wrapped up. This is the highest law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota, the Attorney General, if he's caught up in this, or if Representative Omar is allegedly caught up into this, this is going to be catastrophic because all three of them can go down at the same time if this is true.
You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason. You said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I just don't. I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. You said something that wasn't true. He further states this, Judge Guthman, the court says this, Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench, and I think that interpretation.
Convenient.
First sentence. The first 7 words. This is not some unnamed source talking to the New York Times. This is not some anonymous source talking to whatever your Minnesota Star Tribune or whatever your paper is. This is the court speaking. First sentence, first 7 words. Due to inaccurate statements by the governor, Ramsay County District Court judge has issued and authorized this following news release. That's pretty straightforward. So the court's lying?
I can't tell you, Congressman, but the interpretation was
Somebody's lying, because you can't say the court ordered you to restart the payments, and then the court says we didn't order you to restart the payments. So either you're lying or the court's lying. And I'm just asking you, which one is it?
I just simply know what the attorneys at the agency believed, that it was a misinterpretation.
Could
And
it
I would
be-
note that those
Could it
payments...
be you were trying to hide behind the court, Governor? Could that maybe be the reason why you issued the statements you did and why the court had to do something you never see done before? They issue a press statement saying you're wrong. The governor is wrong. His statement is, their words, not mine, false.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be the reason?
That was not the interpretation of the attorneys. And you know, court work, you can appeal those, Congressman, as you well know. I'm sure
Is it
there's...
all about politics, Governor?
No, it's about taking care of our people, which
Yeah,
Minnesota
these
does
programs
better
go
than
from
anyone
$3
else.
million. The behavioral intervention program went from $3 million to $400 million in 5 years.
So again, and I paused it here for a reason. These programs should have been screaming red lights for investigation committees at the state level, going from $3 and $4 million in 1 year to the next year over $400 million. So Tim Walz is now caught up in this kerfuffle of feeding our future. Ultimately, all of this funneling back to Ilhan Omar. So the bigger question is this: what's going to happen to any of these individuals? Now, let me be very clear. I have absolutely no confidence in Jim Jordan or anybody in Congress, because the truth of the matter is that they are just all buffoons. Jim Jordan specifically has done nothing since he's been on one of these committees to hold anybody accountable. If you don't believe me, I'm going to ask you a question. Name one person that Jim Jordan has put in handcuffs and perp walked as a direct influence from any of his investigations or platitudes that he has on Sean Hannity. The answer is he's done none of it. Comer as well. He's not perp walked anybody. So our only hope ultimately for any of these individuals, have it be Tim Walz, AG Ellison, or Representative Ilhan Omar, to actually being held accountable to the law, is going to be the Department of Justice under Blanche or the FBI, potentially the IRS, because we could also get Scott Pacent and his team to come in here too. I'm curious what your thoughts are, though. What should happen to Tim Walz and to Ilhan Omar if they're found complicit in some of these alleged, maybe not so alleged now, fraud? Because the truth is, they're not alleged anymore. There's 52 defendants that have now pled in just the Feeding Our Future program alone. And there's so much more to go and to look into, and rocks to flip over, if you will, in Minnesota. We know that from some of Nick Shirley's work. What should happen to them is my question. Now, our very next story is going to be one that you don't want to miss. Tucker Carlson, with all of the online chatter that's going on with him, not only between him and Donald Trump, but him and the MAGA base. Well, I got news for you. He's running for president 2028. I'm going to break it all down for you in the next story that you're not going to want to miss. It's right here.